Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. And now that we're 4 weeks into the NFL season, of the 8 teams in the 2 Western divisions, only 2 of them, Tom, have got winning records.
The Rams are still unbeaten, and what, the Kansas City Chiefs?
Kansas City Chiefs. Last week, Kansas City, 16-14 over Denver. They had trouble.
Well, the Broncos are not going to roll over for anybody. I think Ralston really has a very solid team there right now, but the Chiefs just got to get offense going, don't they, to be able to really be a contender.
How about that strange Oakland team? They don't have much offense either.
Well, they play a guy I like very much, the left-hander, the Snake Stabler is a darn good quarterback, and I think if he stays in the lineup, Oakland will begin to score some touchdowns.
He played all the way against St. Louis last week, I understand.
That's right.
He's a good athlete. In the NFC, San Francisco 13, Atlanta 9. The 49ers have surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think Dutchman's Falcons have surprised, too, by not having as good an offensive ball club as they've had like the last couple of years. They're in real trouble down in Atlanta.
But the Rams, 4-0, have a lot of offense, don't they?
Well, they do, but they needed it. You know, Houston actually played a real good football game, and it was very close.
That's surprising that they scored that many points, at least to me, against the Rams.
That's right.
What about our featured performer?
From the Philadelphia Eagles to a featured performer in the NFC West, Harold Jackson, now the Rams, and he can really move it.
He's given John Hadle a real touchdown threat. He was drafted 12th by the Rams in 1968, traded with John Zook to the Eagles for Izzy Lang. That's not really a trade, though. That's robbery.
Harold Jackson has 4.3 speed for the 40-yard dash and gets it right away. He's got tremendous acceleration.
Last year, he led the NFL in catches with 62 and also in yards receiving with 1,048. That's the second time he's led the league in yardage.
Harold Jackson, small but mighty. Boy, John Hadle finds him when he needs him this year, too. It would be an understatement to say that the Chicago Bears were overconfident against the Saints last week. They probably had good reason to, as New Orleans was winless and had allowed an incredible total of 121 points in their 3 previous games.
It seemed that the only member of the Bears who took the Saints seriously was their mascot. So the usually conservative Windy City boys unveiled some secret plays. But the Bears' arcane tricks netted them only 1 touchdown, which came on a Bobby Douglas pass to Jim Harrison with less than 1 minute to play. For most of the game, the Saints secondary, led by number 11, Vivian Lee, was airtight. At times, the Saints employed a college-style offense, but with Archie Manning as the engineer, New Orleans rolled away from Chicago early. At the slightest hint of pressure, Archie deserted the pocket and hit flare-backs like number 34, Jess Phillips. The Saints built a 14-3 lead when 5'5", 160-pound Howard Stevens burrowed through the burly Bears at the goal line. 4 missed field goals by Happy Feller, and Manning's freakish fumble from the 1 kept the game from being a rout. It seems that any time the Bears play, the unexpected always happens. With the score still close at 14-9 in the last quarter, tiny Howard Stevens fumbled right to gleeful teammate Henry Matthews. Matthews' 59-yard run set up New Orleans nicely, and from the 4, Archie rolled to his 2nd touchdown of the game, and the Saints had won their first of the year, 21-16.
Well, that was a large victory for the Saints, Pat. At the start of the season, most people thought they might play at a level all by themselves in the NFC West.
I'll tell you, Tom, after the Atlanta Falcons' performance during the last 3 weeks, there could be a real dogfight to get out of last place in that division.
With an offense that had not scored a touchdown in 8 quarters, the Falcons' firepower seemed to have been reduced to their ability to kick field goals. Under that glaring flaw, the Falcons took the 49ers on to settle a question of second place in the NFC West. Coming off a bitter 40-20 reminder by the Los Angeles Rams that division title number 4 wasn't going to be a cakewalk, the 49ers found the Falcons hadn't forgotten their defensive fundamentals. With San Francisco ahead by a field goal early in the second quarter, John James' punt was taken by number 45, Ralph McGill, and returned to the Atlanta 8-yard line. McGill's run-back was nothing new to Atlanta fans, as against them last year he tied an NFL record for 9 returns with 109 yards. 2 plays later, Vic Washington cruised into the Atlanta goal for the game's only touchdown and a 10-0 lead. But with Nick Mickemeyer blasting field goals from 42 and 46 yards, Brody and company were hard-pressed to maintain the lead, especially under the furious Atlanta rush, led by consensus All-Pro Claude Humphrey, number 87. The lead was reduced to 4 points by the middle of the last period when Dave Hampton set Mickemeyer up for another boot to make it San Francisco 13, Atlanta 9. The frustrated Falcons almost came back, but with 4th and 1 and almost a minute to go on the San Francisco 19, they failed on the big play. For the plummeting Falcons, it meant a tie for last place. And for the 49ers, who lost 2 of their best running backs in the contest, it should prove to be an ill-remembered 13-9 victory.
Elsewhere in the NFC West last week, 2 streaks collided and then continued when the undefeated Los Angeles Rams met the winless Houston Oilers in the Astrodome.
In Houston's Astrodome, it looked like a mismatch with the winless Oilers up against the undefeated Rams. But Houston is rebuilding, as always, and this time they've got a real thing in number 78, John Matuszak, the number 1 draft choice in the NFL. With the Rams as the number 1 rushing team in the NFL, the Oilers performed admirably in closing off the running room of number 45, Jim Bertelsen. The Oilers themselves flashed some potent offense as Fred Willis of Boston College roared and rampaged 50 yards on this play. But all Houston got out of it was a field goal. Missed opportunities abounded as number 37, Jeff Severson, returned this punt 74 yards. And again, Houston got only a field goal, which increased their lead to 6-0. The Rams had no intention of becoming an upset victim, so the defense got cracking. Number 64, Jack Reynolds, stopped this play cold, and then linebacker Isaiah Robertson, number 58, tracked Dante Pastorini right off the playing area. The tough Ram defenders pursued, punished, and made the breaks, and then took advantage of them. Number 89, Fred Dreyer, recovered the fumble, and John Hadel cranked up and did the rest. First, he hit a flying Jack Snow for 1 score. Then Hadel went to number 35, Tony Baker, and the power running game. Tony's touchdown run of 5 yards made it 14-6 Rams. returning to the air, Hadel hit a wide-open Harold Jackson, and the game was on ice. A repeat of the play shows the fine protection afforded Hadel by number 73, Charlie Cowan, who's blocking Houston's number 65, Elvin Bethea. With the game under control and all the time in the world to throw, Hadel unloaded a 69-yard shot to Jackson, who streaked in to make it 28-12. The Rams' front four continued its intermittent visits to Dante's doorstep as number 85, Jack Youngblood, dropped in for a sack. Despite their problems, the Oilers never quit, as Guy Roberts blocked and number 26, Larry Eglin, ran it in. However, the heads-up score wasn't enough to snap the Rams' win streak or the Oilers' losing streak. Los Angeles won their fourth in a row, 31-26.
Last week in Foxborough, there was a contest between the Baltimore Colts and the New England Patriots. Two young teams that had not done too much right this season, Tom.
And at times last week, Pat, it seemed as though it was a contest to see which team could make the most mistakes.
The first serious mistake of the game occurred at the end of the game's first drive when Jim Plunkett's pass to Josh Ashton, apparently good for a New England touchdown, was nullified because of offensive pass interference. At the end of the next series, Baltimore's David Lee outkicked his coverage. 5'5" Mac Heron went to his elbows and knees and then took off. This time, a fumble canceled any possible score, but in the second quarter, the break started going for Jim Plunkett and the Patriots. The interference penalty led to a 7-point halftime lead for New England. In the third period, the ball continued to bounce in behalf of the Patriots and away from the desperate Colts. For the Patriots, John Tarver, number 36, helped himself to his second touchdown of the game. And after three quarters, New England led 17-6. In the final period, Burt Jones got the Colts close with a long pass to wide receiver Glenn Doughty. Despite good position, there were no further touchdowns until the Patriots pulled off one of the season's most intricate offensive maneuvers. When Randy Vataha scored, the Patriots led by 15 points. But the next time they had the ball, the same sort of play didn't work so well. New England's sixth fumble of the day was converted quickly by Burt Jones into Baltimore's first touchdown of the day on a perfect pass to wide receiver Cotton Spire. Moments later, New England's seventh fumble of the game gave Baltimore a fighting chance to save the day. But Howard Schnellenberger's ambitious young Colts were not up to it. Instead, it was victory number one for the Patriots of Chuck Fairbanks. And it was one the young coach is certain to remember for a long time.
In Buffalo's rich stadium last week, the Philadelphia Eagles got several great performances from offensive players, a few great performances from defensive players. They had a tremendous second-half rally, and yet none of this could overcome that one big factor named Orenthal James.
It looked like a bad day for the Eagles when Buffalo's Wallace Francis took this kickoff 101 yards following a Philly field goal. While Francis celebrated his fine run, a la Washington's Charlie Taylor, the Bills were preparing an even bigger surprise in the person of O.J. Simpson, a man about whom whatever is said, it never seems to be enough. On this day, O.J. was in the center ring, and all other acts were suspended as he carried 27 times for 171 yards and 1 touchdown. The amazing thing about all of this is that the Eagles were primed to stop O.J. and still couldn't do it. But trailing 17-6, Philadelphia rebounded as Roman Gabriel hit Norm Bulash for a touchdown. The Bills came right back with O.J., and he got them in close enough for his own 2-yard score. Unruffled by it all, Gabriel brought the Eagles back again as he hit rookie tight end Charlie Young, who made his first score as a pro. At one point, Philadelphia led the game 26-24, but Buffalo kicked a field goal to go ahead 27-26, forcing a furious Eagle finish. Gabriel drove his team goalward using number 25, Tom Sullivan, who rushed for 155 yards, Norm Bulash, who rushed for 104 yards, and Ron James, number 27, who picked up some tough yards when it counted. Relentlessly, the Eagles clawed and gouged their way goalward as the clock ticked off all but the final 3 seconds. Then it was up to Tom Dempsey to boot a gimme 26-yard field goal to give the Eagles victory number 1 for the year. The minute he hit it, Tom Dempsey knew the win was not to be. For the Bills, joyous victors, 27-26, it was a reprieve. A last-second pardon that left them still tied at the top with Miami in the AFC East Division. Their lofty position is due in most part to the man with the Mona Lisa smile, a man who can only be wondering how he's ever going to top himself this week. But the way he's been going this year, O.J. Simpson is bound to find a way.
Well, it seems that Miami has clear sailing again, Pat, in that AFC East.
Buffalo's tied with them right now, Tom, but they're a young, untested team. Before the season, Miami's main competition was supposed to be the New York Jets. But now, without their 2 starting quarterbacks, the Jets are on the ropes for sure.
On the first series of the third quarter, quarterback Al Woodall limped off with an injured knee. With Joe Namath already lost with a separated shoulder, the only man left was rookie Bill Demery, number 6, who, with teeth bared, threw right into the incisors of the Dolphins' zone defense. Now, with both Namath and Woodall gone, there seems no rumble left in the East to cope with the Dolphin Thunder. The Thunder inside is Larry Zonka's booming runs. The Lightning outside is Mercury Morris on a sweep. For long distance, Miami relies on the thunderbolts of Bob Greasy to Paul Warfield and Marlon Briscoe, number 86. The Miami offense is a hurricane. It's Zonka, Morris, Briscoe, bing, bang, boom, touchdown. Only once did Bob Greasy betray his team, and that came on a picture-perfect interception by Jets cornerback Earlie Thomas. When something fancy didn't work, Greasy went back to basics, and for the Jets, it was tough to tackle a tornado. Greasy capped the Dolphins' 31-3 victory with his second touchdown pass to nifty Paul Warfield. When the game ended, Don Shula's Dolphins had won their third game in 4 tries. And with Joe Namath gone, there seems to be no one who can weather the Miami Storm in the AFC East.
We'll be right back with the second half of This Week in Pro Football following station identification.
You know, Pat, both the New York Giants and the Green Bay Packers have played excellent defense, but so far this year they haven't been able to get the offense together enough to live up to their preseason notices.
That's true, Tom. Both the Packers and the Giants have fallen well off the pace in their respective divisions. Although it might be a little bit too early to put a must-win label on any game, it was close to that for both New York and Green Bay when they met before 70,000 plus in the Yale Bowl last week.
Eschewing the tables down at Maury's and the place where Louis dwells, Ivy League types brought their lunch to the Yale Bowl to watch the New York Giants battle the Green Bay Packers. In the Packers' first series, linebacker John Douglas stole this Jim Delgazo aerial, and after a lateral to Spider Lockhart, New York was in business at the Green Bay 36. Six plays later, Norm Snead found Don Herman by the flag, and New York led 7-0. Later in the first period, after a giant fumble at their own 20, John Staggers legged in on this reverse, and the score was tied at 7. For the remainder of the first half, both teams settled into a heavy-hitting defensive struggle. Beginning the third quarter, Scott Hunter replaced Jim Delgazo at the controls of the Green Bay attack. And hitting on conservative passes like this one to MacArthur Lane, the Packers moved in close for 2 field goals and a 13-7 advantage. Then Snead, who hit on 21 of 28 throws for the afternoon, showing poise and a mastery of the short passing game, put together a careful drive, using his tight end Bob Tucker, number 38, to get the Giants in close to the Green Bay goal. And at the top of the fourth quarter, Snead found Bob Grimm, who made a diving catch, giving the Giants a 14-13 advantage. The Giants' frail 1-point lead stood up until only 1 minute and 20 seconds remained, when Scott Hunter found MacArthur Lane over the middle, and Lane raced around the Giant defense into field goal range, the Giants' 29-yard line. With 5 seconds remaining, Chester Marco booted through a 32-yarder, and the Green Bay Packers had a hard-fought 16-14 victory over the New York Giants, leaving the Giants with a disappointing 1-2-1 record, while Green Bay stayed within striking distance of the undefeated Minnesota Vikings in the NFC Central Division.
While the Packers were struggling to stay in contention in the NFC Central, Tom, the Minnesota Vikings found themselves looking squarely down the throat of an angry Detroit Lion Ball Club.
Aroused by 10 straight losses at the hands of the Vikes, Detroit might have been flying just a little too high, as once again it is proven that mistakes against that purple gang will leave you black and blue.
Staying out of the Lions' jaws was goal number one for the Vikings, but to accomplish that, being heard above the loud Detroit crowd wasn't going to be easy. From the onset, the Lions seemed bent on giving the game away. After three Lions couldn't decide if they really wanted the ball, Brent McClanahan of the Vikings decided he did. It took Fran Tarkenton only 2 plays to ring up 6 with a pass to Ed Marinaro. The following series, the Lions could do no better. Al Randolph tackled Detroit punter Herman Weaver to set up Minnesota's second score on another Tarkenton to Marinaro shot. Detroit finally pulled together under the lead of quarterback Greg Landry. The best the Lions could do were 2 field goals, which Minnesota matched for a 20-6 halftime score. In the third quarter, Landry went deep, resulting in controversy. Jeff Wright's interception and apparent fumble, which Larry Walton scooped up, was ruled in favor of the Vikings at the point of impact. The Vikings got another superhuman performance from Chuck Foreman. The super rookie rolled for 114 yards on only 16 carries, despite missing most of the first half with an ankle injury. Landry brought the Lions back with a brief fourth quarter burst. Detroit's hopes finally ended as pressure from Alan Page forced Landry to fire off target. Paul Krause's interception ended the 11-play Detroit drive as the Lions gave the ball up yet another time. Fred Cox's final field goal and his 10th straight brought Detroit fans out of a stand. While these Detroit fans fell just short, the Lions and head coach Don McCafferty fell a mile in a 23-9 loss.
Last week, the Cleveland Browns got together with the Cincinnati Bengals to decide what would happen when the American Conference's #1 defense met the AFC's leading offense.
Under azure skies and cool autumnal temperatures, pro football's battle for Ohio was set for Cleveland's Municipal Stadium. With both teams tied for second place in the AFC Central, the forecast called for a typical Browns-Bengals brouhaha. The Bengals struck first, as number 18, Charlie Joyner, got place kicker Horst Muhlman within range on this 26-yard catch and step. In the second quarter, Phipps took some uncertain steps to break the 10-quarter touchdown famine that was shrouding his team. Knowing when enough is enough, Phipps took his cue to sit down just in time to let number 37, Tommy Casanova, eat his heart out. Leroy Kelly then followed Gene Hickerson and John DeMare down to the Bengal 3-yard line. With the home fans in a frenzy, Leroy ricocheted in to make it 7-3 at the half. Cornerback Ben Davis' second fumble recovery of the day set up the next Brown drive that started on the same feet the first one did. With 4 carries for 52 yards, Phipps showed he could run and still avoid the big crunch. Kelly got the call again and eased into the Bengal end zone to move the Browns out 14-3. For his teammates and fans, it was flashes of deja vu as the 10-year veteran resembled his form of old. Ideas about the Bengals' pussycat passing attack were quickly dispelled when Ken Anderson unloaded a 60-yard bomb to Isaac Curtis. With 9.3 speed and hands like that, number 85 showed why he was the Bengals' #1 pick. But last week, his efforts were only good enough to make it close. For the remainder of the game, the Browns showed Ken Anderson some nerve-wracking defense. The Browns boosted the final score to 17-10 behind the artful dodging of Leroy Kelly and Ken Brown to take over sole possession of second place in the rough-and-ready AFC Central.
2 weeks ago, Johnny Unitas passed another milestone in that career, Pat, over 40,000 yards in passing.
Looking to stop the old master from adding to his record total, the Pittsburgh Steelers sought the shelter of Three Rivers Stadium while looking for win number 4 of the season against the San Diego Chargers.
For Pittsburgh Steeler fans, 1973 is to be the year of the Steel Gang. After 3 decisive wins over Detroit, Cleveland, and Houston, Pittsburgh backers were using every possible device to see if indeed the Steelers are for real. San Diego found out early. The men of steel are for real. Ron Shanklin's 12-yard reception of a Terry Bradshaw aerial climaxed Pittsburgh's first possession. After 2 touchdowns and a field goal with Terry Bradshaw at the controls, Terry Hanratty took charge of the Steeler offensive machine, giving to number 26 Preston Pearson. Pearson's 47-yard gallop made him the leading Steeler rusher with 64 yards. Hanratty had only 2 completions for the afternoon, but one sailed for a 37-yard touchdown to Ron Shanklin. Shanklin's second reception of the half set the stage for a typically tough Pittsburgh defense. Number 29, John Dockery, blocked the punt, which Mike Wagner recovered in the end zone for a Pittsburgh touchdown and a 38-0 halftime lead. The Steelers let the hammer down on Charger quarterback Johnny Unitas, forcing a wobbly pass which Mike Wagner picked off. A repeat of the play shows Unitas being sandwiched between Joe Green and Craig Hanneman, forcing the misfire. For John Unitas, his first pro game played in Pittsburgh wasn't one to remember, as the great veteran suffered 2 interceptions while completing 2 of 9 for 19 yards. Chargers went to second-team quarterback Wayne Clark, but the Steel Gang was not impressed. The Chargers managed a fourth-quarter comeback with third-team quarterback Dan Fouts facing the Pittsburgh reserves. The rookie from Oregon rang up 174 yards in the air while leading the Chargers to a 21-point fourth period. Jerry Levias's reception for the touch wasn't enough, as it was all Pittsburgh to a 38-21 score.
In St. Louis last week, the Oakland Raiders' comatose offense finally rolled over and displayed a pulse beat and a little blood pressure, but only after it had gone 14 quarters without a touchdown.
Even in St. Louis, there were some budding Raider fans who were partial to at least the oldest part of Oakland's phantom offense. What the silver and black attack needed and got was a new commander in the person of number 12, Kenny Stabler. But sometimes even Stabler didn't look like the answer. The Cardinals jumped to an early lead as Jim Hart dropped back and looped one to Jackie Smith, who made a great catch in the corner. A repeat of the play shows how tough Jackie Smith is, even when presented with the maximum embarrassment. The Cardinals came up with some imaginative innovations in the wide-open offensive attack presented by Coach Don Coryell. When all the razzle-dazzle ended, however, it was the Oakland defense that proved basics are best as they crunched the Cardinals with an intimidating defensive display. Number 84, Tony Klein, was the rating party leader. And once intimidated, St. Louis began to give up their scoring opportunities as twice they dropped passes in the end zone. Finally, Stabler got the Oakland offense untracked. After 14 quarters without a touchdown, he led them on 2 long drives to 2 short touchdown runs. The drives were made up of short, less than exciting plays, but they proved that somewhere beneath those silver and black shirts there beats an offense of old. Last week, a 17-10 lusterless win over St. Louis. This week, now that they've got it going, perhaps the Raiders will show that old flair for the end zone.
So the Raiders scored their most points of the season, Tom, 17.
And Pat, the only team that's ahead of them in the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs, haven't scored that many points in a game this season, but somehow they managed to win 3 straight games.
Last week, the Chiefs welcomed Charlie Johnson and the explosive Denver Broncos to Kansas City. And it wasn't long before Johnson and Floyd Little had taken the lead in spectacular fashion. Trailing by 7-6 at the half, Lynn Dawson finally got the Chiefs rolling early in the third period, twice calling on one of the least used runners in the league. The big play came when Dawson faked a run while Otis Taylor sneaked downfield for the payoff pass. Taylor's touchdown had Kansas City in front 13-7 after 3 quarters, and the Chiefs seemed to have things well under control, at least until an award-winning performance by Denver's actor punter Bill Van Heusen. A call of roughing the kicker gave the Broncos a chance to spring a perfect misdirection play by Joe Dawkins. The 72-yard stunner put Denver ahead 14-13 with 10 minutes still to play. But for the remainder of the game, the Chiefs' defense avoided further serious lapses and silenced the unpredictable Bronco attack. As has happened so often throughout the league this year, the deciding points were scored from far out by a field goal kicker. In this case, Jan Stenerud, who kicked 3 field goals in 3 attempts after a 4-for-11 start for the season. Amazingly, with only 1 touchdown, the 16 points for the Chiefs tied their season's high, and their third victory enabled them to remain 1 game up on the rest of the AFC West. (16-14) over a team you've beaten 25 times in 27 tries may not sound impressive, but that's the way it's been going in this year's ultra-conservative style of pro football.
What about our picks for this week, Pat?
Tom, I guess I have to congratulate you. I don't think anybody's ever done what you did last week. 7-0. But we got some tough games going this week.
Tommy the Greek, they call me, right? We're both 13-8. What about this week? Oakland at San Diego.
Well, Oakland finally got some offense going last week. I'll go with the Raiders.
I'm going to have to go with Oakland, too. Stabler's their quarterback.
Minnesota at San Francisco, what do you think?
The Vikings, Foreman, Tarkington, they're just too much football team for anybody. What do you think?
Plus, the 49ers have had some strange problems, particularly on defense. They've got running backs hurt now, so I got to go with Minnesota, too. Kansas City at Green Bay.
Green Bay Packers, again, if Scott Hunter's the quarterback, they can move the ball a little bit.
I'll take Kansas City. Finally, Dallas at Los Angeles.
Oh, that's a toss-up. I'm going to go with the Rams to stay unbeaten.
I like Dallas. They played such good defense the other night against the Washington Redskins. In spite of the fact that they lost, I think they're a good football team anyway. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you what happens. I'm Pat Summerall.
I'm Tom Brookshire, and we'll see you next week.
This Week in Pro Football has been brought to you by West Clocks. Promotional consideration provided by Best Western Motels. There are over 1,250 Best Western Motels located in more than 900 cities throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And by American Airlines. If the sun is shining there, chances are American flies there. From the Caribbean to California to the South Pacific, American Airlines to the good life. Program materials for This Week in Pro Football travel via REA Air Express.